understatement.
And Odell Beckhamless.
Don't even get me fucking started there. That is, it's been a week. It has been a week of sports, that's for sure.
And there's more to come, clearly, because we've got the international break coming up, and there can only be drama, I'm sure, with the fact that we've had Norwich managers sacked after getting his first win, Villa managers sacked after losing 5 on the bounce.
Rodgers is now 2-1 for United as well. God knows where that came from, but it's just people having a punt, I guess. But crazy.
We're not far away, from episode 150. This is episode 148. So welcome to anybody tuning in. I'm here with Adam and Craig, as always, boys. The result is obviously an annoying one, and we'll definitely talk about it. But there's been a lot of drama over the weekend with Daniel Farke sacked, with Dean Smith sacked, with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer on the brink, with Brendan Rodgers rumoured to be coming in, which would then mean Leicester are looking for a manager as well.
Not far off Big Sam coming back in, to be honest.
He's got to be sat by the phone, isn't he?
Yeah.
Frankie
Lampard, knees. Apparently, isn't it? Frankie Lampard is supposed to be a favourite for the Norwich job.
Does he want that job? If you're him, surely you want to be. I'd have taken Lampard over Howe at Newcastle, and I think that's distinctly more appealing. The opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of financial input. Maybe he's not a big Saudi investment fund guy. Who knows?
The thing is it's an odd one, ain't it? Because I feel like he almost thought that he was going to get a job sooner with a bigger side, and he ain't. And I'm wondering if he's starting to just think like, I'll get this one, like get that first relegation under my belt and go from there. Because I think he's just maybe came out to accept that he's not gonna get these big jobs that he thinks he's gonna get. There are about 100 managers in the frame before anyone. Like if Brendan Rodgers was to leave, I can't imagine that Frank Lampard is even on their shortlist. And I think in his head he potentially thought he was, and I think this is maybe him coming to that realization.
Wouldn't be surprised to see him though at some point. I think what you got out of him at Chelsea was interesting football, different players coming in from a youth standpoint. A lot of Chelsea fans that liked what they had under Lampard, but obviously results equate to everything. I think a name that I'd quite like to hear brought up a little bit more often is Scott Parker. He's actually been doing a really nice job. He continues to do a really nice job, and a little bit surprised his name hasn't come up more often, but he's going to be back in the Premiership, you would assume, next year, or based on current form, but we'll see.
I think that's why you're not hearing him. Why would he want to go? We're definitely going to get into this conversation because I want to have this at some point today. It's the same reason you're not seeing Mitrovic's name being thrown around much for January. Fulham are definitely going to come back up. Would he do a good job at most teams that need a striker in the Premier League? Possibly. Is he going to be for sale? Absolutely not. I think he's just scored his 20th goal or something ridiculous this season.
Mitrovic is the Neil Warnock of football players. He's fantastic in the Championship, and then he gets in the Prem and doesn't know what to do with himself.
Yes, 20 goals in 17 appearances in the Championship so far. He's going to smash that record comfortably.
Then you start talking about, and we've spoken about it like over and over again, just the chasm between the Premier League and the Championship, where Mitrovic done next to nothing last year, and that Fulham team, as exciting as it was, just didn't score enough goals and just defensively leaking as well. But Mitrovic has had his go in the Premier League and didn't pull up any trees. So what's changed? Is it the quality of the Premier League compared to the Championship, or is it just that Mitrovic has got better? That's also a very plausible point.
Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? I mean, at the same time, you could say that he's no worse than Mope. In 2017, he had 18 appearances, 12 goals. In 2018, the year after, he had 37 appearances, 11 goals. It's only really under Parker when he came up that he went to pot and really wasn't very good. And even then, most of his appearances were subs. I think he was hurt, wasn't he? 'Cause I'm seeing here he had 13 starts and 3 goals.
So maybe there's just more respect on that name than maybe we're giving him credit for. I think, we've been linked to him for a few years, right? In terms of just, there's someone that you would like to see come in, just one of those just born goal scorers.
We don't need a striker. What are you talking about?
Only 27 as well. So I feel like he's one of, like you said, I feel like he's been around forever.
Adam said the same about Sterling as well. I think one of you guys said just around how young Sterling is and how long he's been around the game. You kind of just you kind of think these people are in their early 30s, like just at the maturity stage of their career, but it turns out they're not even hitting their prime yet.
Another one that literally just yesterday I saw it and my jaw dropped was, I feel like I've heard his name thrown around for years now, and it's Reece James. And they were talking about this like youth factory of right backs at Chelsea. Reece James, Tarek Lamptey, Livramento, and I was like, yeah, but like Reece James is getting on a bit now. Like he's 28, 29. Like, I mean, like that was years ago that he came through. 21 years old.
Yeah. I mean,
I
don't know what they've been feeding him, but I mean, 21 years old.
He's a big boy.
Yeah.
Let's get on to the game. One change from the Liverpool game, and that was who did we bring in? We brought
Lamptey started.
Lamptey and brought off Jakob Moda. That was the change. And to me, I think that was mistake number one. Newcastle United are a very different proposition to Liverpool. I understand that we got a 2-2 draw at Liverpool, and it was a great performance with the false 9, and I understand keeping faith in it. But I think Potter is smarter than that, and I think he I don't know why he didn't adapt to the team that was playing in front of him. I don't know why Mopé was on the bench. I don't know why that lineup was the one that we selected. And I thought that from the minute I saw it. What did you two think when you saw the team sheet?
Confusion. I didn't understand where the players were going to go. Just in terms of, we ended up with what? Lamptey was a right winger. Trossard was playing in that false 9 again. We had March as the left winger above Cucurella. And then we were sort of playing this 4-2-3-1, weren't we, really, with Basuma and Lallana in their usual spot. And then Mwepu came in as the sort of central attacking midfielder. And there was some fluidity to that formation too. It was an interesting approach. It shows the depth we have from a wing-back standpoint, which is quite nice. And also in another sense, shows the complete lack of depth we have when it comes to wide forward attacking players. And we'll get onto this in more detail, but I can't tell you how frustrating it is to watch this team fail to be able to break down a side that sits back. And at some point, a big side is going to come in and play us, and they're going to say, you know what? We're not going to get cute. We're not going to actually attack. We're just going to sit back against Brighton. We know they're not going to do anything. Let's not give away a penalty, and then we'll just score 18 goals on the counter-attack against them.
That's the Man City formula, isn't it? Basically, I mean, in terms of just the high press doesn't work, but the counter attacking absolutely does. And I think going back to the lineup in terms of what we're doing. I mean, hindsight says that it is confusing, but also last week we would have been crying out, play Lamptey and Cucurella in the same team with Mwepu and Basuma in the middle. Like, you can't go wrong. We need to go at this Newcastle side. So last week we were, I personally was saying that in terms of let's go for it. Let's put in a really attacking lineup. But it just, the first half, we'll get into the halves and stuff like that. It seemed like a good time to do that. And the first half definitely alluded to that. But I think Adam's completely right. It's testament that we've got Taylor Richards and Sarmiento on the bench in terms of attacking wide players as our only alternatives. So when you start playing Lamptey up in that side, Veltman is a very deputable right back in terms of what he's doing, and I'm completely fine with that. But when you're playing March and Lamptey in those sort of wide attacking areas, and when it doesn't work, when people sit back, the options are very limited. So before the game, I watched it this morning because I missed it yesterday. But when I saw the lineup yesterday, I thought, good, we're going at them. but I'm not entirely sure how. But that is a very attacking lineup. And the first 45 was pretty good, but we saw where it ended up.
Yeah. I mean, the first 45 minutes wasn't bad at all. 66% possession, 90% pass accuracy rate, which is outrageously high. And I think that summarizes that playing in front of an entire 11 players perfectly. And we hammered them. Penalty for you guys. The NBC studio were absolutely infuriated at the penalty being given, which is ironic, given that the exact same two people that were in that studio Saturday were the same two in it a couple of weeks ago and called Neil Maupay naive for not going down sooner on the Norwich contact, and were absolutely lambasting Trossard yesterday for going down due to the contact from Clark. You can't win when you're a player like that. And for me, it was a penalty all day. Did he go down slightly after the contact as opposed to right away? Yes. Was it the right decision? Yes. Was it a pen anyway? Yeah. I think that it was a foul regardless. And that shows a bit of savvy that sometimes Albion don't have. I feel like Maupay and Trossard especially both have that kind of, some would say like the cheat stuff, but I don't think it is. It's just playing to the rules that the Premier League has created of their own volition. Penalty for you too?
Yeah, I mean, it was in terms of there's contact on the shin. There's a small tug of the shirt as well. And Trossard has tried to stay up. Ultimately, he hasn't seen it worth staying up. So, like you said, it's the rules of the game now. We a lot of those goes against us. We have this stereotype of a very nice team that plays nice football and is very nice to their opponents. So, the rules are rules. You can't grab someone's shirt and get in the way of them in the penalty area or anywhere in the pitch. If that was anywhere in the pitch, it would have been a foul. So why not in the penalty area? Yeah,
don't try and kick out and catch the shin of a player like Trossard in the penalty box. It was a penalty for me, and it wasn't in doubt once you saw the replay. In real time, it was a little bit more questionable, wasn't it? Because of that little moment that he took to then go down. I think he probably the ball came out a little bit further than he'd have liked. He knew he was going to lose possession, so the argument there is to say that well, he knew he was losing it, so he had to go down. But like you say, you just don't take those chances as a defender in the box. I think we would feel so aggrieved if we did not get a penalty awarded in that situation. I do want to talk though about what you mentioned, how we came out in the first half, how aggressive we were, and the play that we put together. And I agree, statistically, and even to the eye test, so the first 35 minutes we were dominant. They didn't have a chance. Newcastle, they had one counter, I think, really. But let's face it, the whole game they had one shot on target. Even the fact they came out of their shell in the second half. But how many times have we seen this from Brighton, where we're all over someone? We have this tiki-taka part, 90% passing accuracy. No one puts the ball in the goal, apart from the fact that we had a penalty that, again, some may argue was not a penalty. On 26 minutes, there was an amazing cross from Veltman that went through everyone. It reminded me of shades of Gascoigne. Was it 96? When he far post, you have a leg swung out. We had three players that could have scored there. And for me, that moment summed up our team. You can do whatever you want. You can put the ball wherever you want. No one can actually put the ball in the net from open play. It's infuriating.
I remember him taking especially that chance was a great signal in terms of what we were doing. And even more poetic that Lamptey took it away from Trossard on that chance as well, where, if Lamptey didn't touch it, then Trossard probably would have put that away. So it's just so typical of this team at the moment. You start talking about the first 4 or 5 games of the season, we're a new team, it's going really well, we're taking our chances. It seems like we're just back to last year. But I think we'll go more into that in the second half too.
Yeah, you actually took it right out of my mouth. That's exactly where I was going to go next. We got that goal ahead, and in typical Albion fashion, we were presented with insane chances to go ahead and make it 2 before half time, and that one was the big one. When you look at your XG and your stats and your shots on target, 14 shots, 5 on target, none of them include that, and that was arguably the best chance of the entire game. And that's not including all of the other stats that we're looking at that say that we were dominant. We absolutely destroyed them on XG, and it's not including what should have been a tap-in for multiple players in the box. And as you said, they didn't particularly threaten. Like you said, I think Wilson had 1 shot in the first half, and even then it wasn't particularly a problem.
Does Mopé score if he's on the pitch with that cross?
Yeah, I think he does.
Does Connolly? Probably not. But yeah, you feel like Mopé scores there, right? Which is, it's easy in the hindsight. But then you just go back to the fact that when you put out an 11 that doesn't have a ruthless finisher in it, you can create these chances. And then we stand around afterwards and go, I can't believe no one put it in the net. It's because we had 14 wing backs on the pitch.
And it's not a Brighton thing, right? Because you hear those conversations happen every 3 weeks at the Etihad. With the formation that Pep is playing. There's a couple of times where someone will square it across, Foden will put it across, and you're like, if that's Aguero and not Bernardo Silva, that's him. Because he's not got the number 9 instinct. And like that's all well and good when you have the depth of Manchester City. But when you have, Mopé on the bench against Newcastle, who he scored 3 in 2 games last year, by the way, isn't playing, I don't get it. I don't understand at all. And the second half was just a disaster from, I think, about 48 minutes.
Appalling.
The first 2 minutes of the half were superb, and everything after that, it was almost as if, I think We Are Brighton, the Twitter group, said that it doesn't look like Brighton have got out of first gear here. We go into second, we're gonna be a real problem. I think it was almost as if we stalled instead of going into second gear. We just took everything off of the accelerator, the clutch, everything. And they deservedly got an equalizer and could have won it if it wasn't for Big Bob. But what do you two think went wrong? Because I have an opinion on where the catalyst for everything that went wrong was in the second half, but I would love to hear your twos first because I feel like I've given my opinion first a bunch of times. So you two first.
Probably Mwepu coming off at halftime. In terms of, we talked about his dynamism and stuff like that and what he brings. He was up there with Trossard in sort of a 2-press in what he was doing up at the top. Bringing McAllister on, I'm perfectly happy with that, but just doesn't have the energy that maybe Mwepu did. It just feels like we just shut ourselves in the second half in terms of just playing ourselves into trouble and just taking risks and stuff that you just don't need to take. I appreciate we have a brand and we want to play that sort of football. But we did nothing in that second half. It was so stereotypical in having one half that was really good, running the show, and not taking that next step to finish them off. And we saw it over and over again last year, and we're starting to see it again now. Soon you'll see those XG meme comments come out in the next couple of weeks as well, because I don't know where it stops.
There's towards the end of the first half, even, right, there was Newcastle started coming out a little bit more. But let's face it, for the first 35 minutes, Newcastle were 10 men behind the ball with Wilson sat up top. They were in a bank of 5 and bank of 4. Brutal to try and break that down. But we started seeing hints of a cataclysmic sort of, in some ways, a mental breakdown, concentration. A lot of mistakes started coming in at the end of the first half. Sanchez couldn't have, I guess, alluded more to his later game situation than what he did at the end of the first half. A couple of horrible clearances, horrible playing out of the back, the standard stuff that we keep seeing every week now. And I think that we talked about this in depth last week. It's becoming a problem. He's not learning from some of these mistakes that we keep seeing in terms of distribution and getting too cute playing out of the back. That's a concern for me. what surprised me is that we then did come out in the first few minutes of the first half. There were a couple of interesting chances for us. There was a really, really good ball that came out from Lallana just after we kicked off, and Trossard had a shot, and then Cucurella had a terrible header. There's a couple of chances in the game where Lallana had a decent attempt at a shot, and he clearly has forgotten how to shoot in the last few years as well. And for me, this is what it comes down to in this team. And I know that there's, even in the chat, we've got Mikey saying we need a striker. Twitter is all about we need this. We have to bring in someone who can finish. I do get that. For me, though, the style of play that we have, I want players that are in the midfield that can shoot, and players that push up that are comfortable shooting. Cucurella had 2 chances and he shanked them, and then was afraid to shoot for the rest of the game. Started passing his way out of good shooting opportunities. Lamptey's not particularly clinical. Mwepu scored an amazing goal last week, but he's not shown a massive amount of proof that he'll have a nice shot at any point. I just don't, and Lallana we talked about, I just don't know who's scoring the goals for us. If it's not a forward, if it's not Trossard that swings one in, every other goal that we get seems just sort of like luck in some ways. I'm not confident if any one of our players takes a shot, except for Trossard and Mope when he's on the pitch.
Inside the 18-yard box.
Correct.
I agree with you. Craig, I thought the same thing. I thought that there was definitely signs, Adam, of us dropping off in that first half, and I thought it might be just because we were close to the end of that first half and we'd kind of just decided to take our foot off and get into halftime. And the way we started in that second half made me think that was right. But I think Mwepu coming off and Maka coming on was the big one.
Alexis was poor.
Very poor, almost anonymous. And we'll get onto the players in particular as well, because there was another player I found to be essentially invisible all day. And he's a player I rate, but he was absolutely shocking this today as well. But I thought Mwepu coming off, there wasn't anyone else willing or able to do his job. And we tried to persist with the same formation we had with a square peg round hole stuff. And it showed from then on, because we had no way of getting out. And when we did, as you said, the players weren't good enough to create a chance from it. For me, I would like to see a striker signed. And my thing isn't so much that people are like, we need a 20-goal a season striker. Well, great. So does every single team in the world. Like, they don't come for free. Like 3 players last season scored more than 20 goals. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, I don't know where that idea comes from. What we need is an alternative presence, in my opinion. And we haven't had one since Glenn left. And he wasn't up to it to play in Potter style anyway, simply due to the way it was, and he didn't think he was capable of doing it. Potter has played taller men up front in the past in his old clubs. We've seen it plenty of times, so it's not like he is one of those people who isn't willing to do it. He's done it with great success everywhere. I don't know why we haven't. Money, wages, I'm not sure. But I'm honest to God, yesterday, regardless of that drop-off in that first half, I think if we had any of these, I've got a list of them. If we had any of these strikers, we win by 3 yesterday. Antonio, Tony, Jimenez, Ings, Wood, Wilson, Watkins, Eduard, and Dominic Calvert-Lewin. I know we can't buy them. I'm not saying let's go get one of them, because obviously most of them are not for sale or too expensive at this point. But all I'm trying to really say is that list is an attainable standard of striker. It's not, I want Lukaku or Haaland. I want someone who provides a different option, because if Cuckoo and Lamptey are popping in balls higher, like they're bringing in those aerial balls, and we're actually making Kraft and Clark work, because they're shit. They're not good centre halves. There's going to be a lot of second balls that fall in the box. And that is where Mope is most deadly. So I'm not saying let's get rid of Neil either. I think that the way we play, it's the one dimension we don't have, and it makes us so easy to defend against.
Yeah. I like that. People are agreeing with you in the chat as well. And Lamptey, I didn't feel sorry for him, but Richie at left back yesterday was getting absolutely, every time Lamptey got the ball, he was terrified. And we know what Cuckoo is capable of. And Mikey said this too. And what Enoch on the door is a great name, by the way. Well done, you. The amount of crosses that come into the box that aren't bad crosses, and there's not a presence, as you say, in there that is capable of taking advantage of that we've seen so far. I still think, in terms of how Potter plays the game, and again, we'll use comparisons of shades of Guardiola, because I know we couldn't be more different in terms of financial backing, but tactically, we're not a million miles away. There is such an importance on having your player up top be able to drop back into the midfield, because your wing backs are pushed so far up on the sides. You need to then be able to create more presence in the middle, a little bit deeper. And that's why we don't have this target man situation up front. And we feel a little bit more comfortable with having a false nine where Trossard comes deeper, gets the ball, the wing backs push up, we spread play out, cross the ball in, no one does anything with it. The difference between us and them, and it's easy to say this, is that every single one of their midfield players, given half a chance, will swing the ball and smash it in the back of the net. Every single one of their players, Bernardo Silva, Foden, they're all comfortable shooting. I'm not comfortable with a single player in this team outside of Trossard to have a solid, consistent attempt of a shot when he gets half an opening. It's just not there. And that's the difference for me. It's like Potter's style of play needs that, because we're not so reliant on the striker. So if we bring in a striker, that's all well and good. We have to change. We have to create more opportunities for them and let them push up. And that creates a massive tactical change.
Yeah, and I think that's where exactly I was going with that, in terms of, you can play that style as much as you want, but, if you're playing one striker, you need goals to come from elsewhere. And you're absolutely right. We fail, especially at the long shots or being able to create opportunities from afar or to finish them off. The Lallana chance in the second half, in terms of just putting it wide, like, again, no shooting boots in that midfield means that if you're going to play a false nine, or if you're going to play one single striker up top, they have to come from somewhere. Going back to Enoch on the door, again, smashing name, but in terms of why put those crosses in if no one's there? Or if you're putting in way too high, like the Veltman cross in the first half is perfect. Like, I think it just got applauded left, right, and rhubarb in terms of how good it was and the way that we can attack that. But if you're putting it in at 7-8 feet high and being able to do that, no one's going to get there, because Trossard is 5'7", 5'8", not a notorious header of the ball. So where are the goals coming from? And back to Josh's point too, if we need a different style, and I think, in terms of, if you swap Trossard for Mopé, does anything really change yesterday in terms of the rest of the game, in terms of the entire 90? Because I think he would finish off the Veltman chance, but would he have the trickery to win the penalty like Trossard did? There's ebbs and flows to what we do.
Yeah,
there needs to be a change in style if the striker changes. I think that's where we're going with this conversation, in terms of, you can't just one for one replace Trossard with an Antonio or a Tony. The style needs to change too. Lamptey can't be that high up on the right. And also, we don't have the false nine dropping in. So the wing backs have to come back now if we have a change in striker. So it seems so...
It's a bit of a catch-22, isn't it, really,
right,
in some ways?
And it's so dependent on that one position. And it feels strange to talk about it in that way.
I think there is a solution to it, though. You drop Trossard a little bit deeper again, like he has been, like he was for a while. Put him out on that left for the invisible Solly March, and have a striker play up front.
Yep.
I mean, it's worked before. That's what he did a lot early on. And this may sound like a stupid question, but because they're a Premier League elite football team. But I'm going to ask it. Our coaching staff, Graham Potter, wasn't exactly the greatest player in the world. Didn't pull up trees. Mostly played at left back for pretty much his entire career. Billy Reid, again, didn't pull up trees particularly in his playing career, but has obviously found massive success with Potter, and did well at Hamilton, which I didn't know about very well. but he was a central defender and central defensive midfielder. Bjorn Hamburg, no experience playing football. He is just a coach, full-on first-team coach. And Bruno, of course, as whatever kind of level of coach he is, very much within the first-team squad, and then Ben Roberts as a goalkeeping squad. Who's coaching them to shoot? Because none of those are in any way, shape, or form strikers or finishers or have any experience putting the ball in the back of the net. So I asked genuinely, who's our shooting coach? Which one of those is our shooting coach? Do we have a specialist one? Do we have like a specialist striker coach? Because we don't know about it if we do. And that's one of those things where it's like, okay, do you know what I mean? Like, it's probably a weird question to ask, but we don't have anyone on that coaching staff that has any experience in front of goal in their playing career. And I'm not saying you have to, but it seems like one of those things that should at least be looked at or talked about.
Maybe. I don't buy massively into the idea that, you need to have X experience to be able to then train Y. I mean, Mourinho was a bit of a shite player and has won everything that there is, and regardless of what your thoughts on him are now, and he's more of a meme than a manager at this point. But maybe we just don't. Outside of the coaching, we've got quite a number of young players and quite a lot of players that have never demonstrated an ability to shoot. It's not like we've brought in, the only exception to this is a player that's currently out injured, which is Danny Welbeck. You don't need to train Danny Welbeck how to shoot. We've seen that he's capable when given an opportunity. He knows where the goal is. He has that ability. And I do think we miss him at the moment. I really do. But he, again, is not at the echelon, quite the level where our aspirations lie even now. So maybe he's not the answer either. I do want to call out in the chat again. We'll call out Enoch again. Is coming up with this idea of a difference between a cross and a cutback, and that some of these need to be more cutback focused because of the stature and how the team is laid out. I completely agree. Some of these floaty crosses that come in the box, and some of this will be learning, right? Lamptey's only just recently back from injury. Cucurella is newer to the club. Getafe, different setup in terms of how he would necessarily put the ball in the box. A lot more grounded cutback balls that maybe come back to the edge of to the 18 would be useful in this setup. Easy with hindsight, but for me, it's not about shooting training. I just don't think we just don't have the personnel.
I agree with you on that point too.
Yeah.
The red card all day. I don't think there's too much discussion about that. Clearly impeded him from scoring. It's a shame because if it was Josh Sargent, he'd probably not have bothered.
It was just a really good play by Sanchez. Smart play.
It was, and I know people are absolutely all over him on his back for this, but I think that was the best thing he could have done.
There's nothing he could have done that was better than what he did.
Perfectly fine.
I don't think it was his fault that scenario happened either. It was just one of those things. We were caught high up and the ball was in behind, and I think he reacted as well as he could.
Yeah. I mean, you can defend it, right? In terms of what he's done there and taking one for the team. A lot of internet, I guess there's a lot of personalities on Twitter, of course, but in terms of bringing out the whole word of cheating and how would you defend that and how is that allowed? Why are you happy with that? He's rightfully been punished with the laws of the game, and he's taken one for the team. It's no less than a cynical yellow foul. So in terms of what he's done there, and in terms of that the person on the end of that, in terms of Callum Wilson as well, absolutely right, within his rights to do that, and I think it's fine. I think it's more talking around his performance today in general, around some very erratic passes and some very odd choices that he's been making. And I think we've spoken about it a few times now. It might be good for him to have a game off and try and, I guess, get himself together in terms of what we're doing. Because I feel every time we talk about a Sanchez error, or we talk about maybe a complacency or maybe an overconfidence in terms of his approach. I understand with a sweeper keeper, you take those risks, but it feels a little bit too much at the start of this season compared to last.
Yeah, just just get rid of the ball. Just get rid of the ball when you don't have an easy, simple pass on. And the flip side to his game is what he did about the 55th minute, where he smacked a ball up to Correa, passed to Trossard, and that's what set up that Lallana chance. So you go from the sublime to the ridiculous with him, and that he has this amazing sort of level of distribution in his pocket, and then sometimes he just makes these boneheaded plays that you just think, what are you doing?
And I was thinking that as well. Like, I was obviously watching it this morning, and like I'm there just like, what are you doing there? What are you doing there? And I go, oh, fantastic pass. And it's like okay, well, there's obviously he's consistent in his shot stopping abilities, but I feel like his distribution has been, and I think the commentary said erratic. I think it's the right word for it, because he does pull out stellar passes most of the time, but I just think he has an error in him now. I don't know where that has, and I think it's probably the overconfidence, or in terms of how he's being told to play as well. There's also an element of that. But in terms of being able to cut those out, because his shot stopping is second to none, and his decision making and his distribution was just a little bit off yesterday.
And I think we've spoke about this before, haven't we? I think it comes with the type of goalkeeper we're obviously wanting him to be. Ederson is one of those players. We're wanting him to become an Ederson, Alisson, Neuer style sweeper keeper that's incredibly comfortable with the ball at his feet. Well, about 10 minutes ago?
Yeah, I was just going to say this.
Alisson has just scored an absolute howler of an own goal. He came to claim a cross, something that we've just criticized Sanchez for last week badly, and he wasn't great this week either with one of those claims. Luckily, it was pretty much a foul, but we were lucky because it wasn't a great take. And Alisson has just gone ahead and done the exact same thing and put the ball in the back of its own net.
I'm just looking at it, and it's awful. I think,
I think that's one of those things that you have to just accept is what's happening. The problem is Alisson and Ederson do that 3 times a season. He's doing that 1 every 3 games a minute, and I think a lot of that is age and lack of experience. This isn't even his first full. This is his first full season as a number 1 goalkeeper in the Premier League. Remember, he's not. He only played since January fully, because he got a couple, didn't he, at Spurs, where there was all that weird stuff going on with him and Brian and Mope and all that stuff. But I think we've just got to hope that he can keep adapting to it, and that incident at the end of the game may be one of those things that he desperately needed, was a game off to sort his head out with what's going on, and he's got a lot of time off to think about it because he's got an international break as well.
You can sit back and watch how it's really done with Steele playing.
That was my next question. Would you want Steele?
No.
Because Sherpen just played for the under-23s. I just looked at it before we kicked off this conversation. Sherpen is back from injury, and he played the last under-23 game just a couple of days ago, which is probably why he wasn't on the bench yesterday, because he just played. And for me, I'd be starting him all day long. I've seen enough of Steele to know that I don't like what I see in Carabao Cup games against Harrogate. Like, I don't want to see him line up against any Premier League team ever. Pretty
much. Yeah, give Sherpen. We paid some money for Sherpen, right? So let's see what he's got.
Do I want Sherpen in goal? Yes. Do I think it's going to happen? Absolutely not.
And he's played a lot too. To say that he's young, like, he played a full season in the Eredivisie, like 2 years ago. It's not like he doesn't have first team experience in a decent league. Like, and the thing is, in the Eredivisie, defenses are shocking. So he's being peppered with shots in the Dutch league.
He's a big boy as well, isn't he?
6'7", yeah, 6'8", is he? Whew.
Yeah, he gained an inch. Yeah, he's clearly Potter and co have a thing for tall keepers, and if you are slightly vertically challenged, they are not a big fan of you. Yeah, we'll see what they do. They've got a couple of weeks to decide, I suppose. I do want to go back to the game because I want to talk about the subs. and
Yeah.
what you thought of them, because they were sort of, Potter's normally quite good with his subs. I thought they were pretty awful yesterday. We talked about Alexis really came in, and I'm so confused as to what footballer Alexis McAllister is. And hopefully my Amazon device doesn't start going crazy like it did when I last said his first name. I'll just call him Maka. Mope was, as we've seen a lot of the time, relatively anonymous. Again, at that point in the game, we were not creating anything. I think he touched the ball about 9 times with his back to goal and never got a sniff of anything. And then we took Lamptey off and Webster came in, and we pushed Veltman out and moved things around a little bit. Webster, I want to see Webster start again soon, because you saw how pushed up he started to get in certain instances. And I go back to the fact that I think Webster is actually one of our biggest attacking threats, weirdly, when we have possession of the ball. I love those runs he goes on. We get the extra man upfield. He knows how to pick a pass out, and he works relatively well with whomever's playing wing back. So that was fine, but I think that was more of a case of Lamptey was tired, right? And we had to bring someone on. I think it's maybe a year or so too soon, but I would have loved to have seen him take a risk and bring Sarmiento on, because, or even Pascal Gross. We needed someone to be able to make a bit of a difference. We know Pascal's not scared to have a shot. Sarmiento's, what we talked about last week, one of the few players in addition to Trossard where you think he can play in the slightly more centrally and actually take someone on, which is a weird concept for this team, as opposed to just passing it backwards and around, putting out to a winger to then slam it across that no one gets on the end of. So I was a bit upset about that. What did you guys think?
I'm looking at the bench, and I didn't look at it in full yesterday because I just saw Taylor Richards was on there, and I saw that Steele was the goalkeeper. I wasn't sure who was. But I looked at it in terms of midfielders yesterday that I would have, and Maka came on. And I'm really not kidding, because I wouldn't have been upset if McAllister had started yesterday. But when he came on as a sub from Mwepu, and knowing how Mwepu had played in that first half, I would have taken any of the alternatives over him in that role. I would have taken Sarmiento, Gross, or Jakob Moda, as opposed to McAllister in that role. He is exactly what we didn't need as a substitute when we knew how that game was going to go. And that was the biggest thing for me. And Neil Mope is not a substitute. He is not in any way, shape, or form a player that is an impact sub. He either starts or doesn't play for me. I agree with you. He's very good at what he does when he gets a full 90 minutes, but he just isn't capable. It's just not his game to just come on and make a splash. He's not that player at all. And unless you're putting 4 or 5 players up front and you're desperate in a cup final, something like that, and you stick Mope on, like with 3 other attackers in extra time, I don't mind it. But that's not his job. And to me, I would have rather have seen Sarmiento come on than Neil Mope, because that's an impact sub.
I would have taken Locadia. Do you know how weird that is to say that?
Yeah, I probably would have too, because we've already seen that he is an impact sub. Locadia is actually capable of doing something just a little bit different.
He's actually one player that can shoot from outside the box, by the way, as well. He's not scared of actually having a shot.
Is it just around, and I think you touched on it, Adam, in terms of just confidence? Is it just the players just lack the mentality to shoot, because they know that if they do get it wrong, that the crowd's going to go on their back? Because I do want to mention the crowd in a little bit, because it's been all over the place on Twitter and all that jazz. But in terms of that, and you're also talking about Pascal Gross as well. He seems to be the Jekyll and Hyde of every conversation in terms of, why is he on? He's too slow. But then when he's not playing, it's like, oh, we should have played Gross. Like, what are you thinking? And then you're talking about Jakob Moda going from a starter to an unused sub and bringing on McAllister instead. Now, a very left field option would have been Moda on for Mwepu instead. A larger presence, maybe a little bit more strength than McAllister has, who's very technical and tries to play through banks of 4 in this instance. So trying to break a team down and having Moda on one of those wings or having him as an advanced forward would have been great, I think, but that's just me. But again, hindsight's a wonderful thing, right? You can say, you go back to the Burnley game and you go back to the earlier games in this season where McAllister's come on and he's made an immediate impact and he's gone and scored the goal. So, ebbs and flows, fine margins of this wonderful game. But seeing Moda go from a starter to an unused sub, not using Sarmiento or Taylor Richards to try and change the game or have an impact and bring something slightly different. Again, I think you're right. Perfectly justified thing in terms of the subs weren't good enough.
I mean, Lacardia doesn't suffer for confidence, does he? Like, if you can put out music like that and keep putting music out like that, taking a shot from 20 yards out is nothing. I mean, when you've got the balls to throw that on Spotify.
When your ego is boosted by that many Instagram likes, I would be shooting from halfway.
It's a confounding one how things worked out yesterday, and even outside of the subs in the second half, there was what we did yesterday that was different is we did actually come out of the blocks in the first half, which is something that we've talked about ad nauseum at this point. We fail to start quickly. We come out sluggish for the first 10 minutes and we basically do a decent job. We don't concede. And then suddenly we get into the game. So opposite way around yesterday, where we started out nice, great 35, 40 minutes. And then second half, pressing, wore down, started to just it felt like every pass that happened ended up being misplaced. Started becoming second to a lot of the balls that were dropping, and it was frustrating because it felt like the energy and the motivation fell off. And even if we had maybe brought on any of these other subs, it might not have made much of a difference just because it didn't feel like we had the impetus or the onus to actually go out and get a goal. Funnily enough, until the last 2-3 minutes of the game when we had Lewis Dunk in goal with an ill-fitting top and gloves on, and we actually decided, oh, you know what? Let's boot the ball up and actually hold some possession and create some chances. We played our best part of the second half with the first 5 minutes of the second half and the last 3 minutes when we had Lewis Duncan goal and 10 men.
Yep. There's no reason why we shouldn't have scored a goal from open play at any point in that game. There's absolutely no excuse for it.
Yeah, damning. And depending on whether you're an optimist or a pessimist, you say that you can look at it and say that with the last few games, we've gone only one loss in 5 or 6 games. And the other party looks at it and goes,
we haven't won either.
We haven't won and we can't score. Yeah.
And I think that's exactly what you were saying earlier, Craig. This is we're slowly reverting back to exactly what the problem was last season. We did not sign anyone else with an offensive presence. Doesn't matter whether it's midfield or going forward or whatever. We didn't sign one of those players that we were hoping to get. The one player we did that half falls into that category has made a great impact in the last 2 games since he's actually been fit. And then when he went off, we looked rather toothless without him. Coincidence? Maybe, maybe not. We are now very much in the bottom 6 of the form table. Not great. And in terms of players yesterday, I'll start. Solly March was an absolute waste of a spot in the 11th. And I like Solly March. But when you said you didn't know where people were playing, Adam, I looked at his heat map earlier. When you said it, I had my head down. I was looking because I was actually interested because I thought, eye test wise, I thought he was utterly anonymous. And I went and looked at his heat map and his spots are just about everywhere. His average position is in the center of the midfield when it looked like he was supposed to be a left winger. His heat map, he's on the right, he's on the left, he's forward, he's at the back. He doesn't seem to have an actual position. And it showed. He had the least touches of any player out there that started the game. Everybody else had more touches than he did. And he was subbed off in the 65th minute. I thought he was totally anonymous. Alexis McAllister had almost as many touches as he did, and he played half. To me, there's your solution if you're wondering how you fit players into a squad. Hindsight 2020, of course, and I don't know what Potter envisioned him doing, but he didn't do it. So to me, you swap him out, you put Trossard where he was, doing whatever he was doing, that playing in space, I guess, and which Trossard is excellent at, and put Mopé up top. that's a done deal for me. I thought Solly was totally anonymous, and Sanchez distribution was dodgy as well. And there were a lot of times yesterday I forgot Adam Lallana was on the pitch as well, except when he was missing very good opportunities.
I'm disagreeing with you on that one a little bit. I actually thought Lallana was arguably a best player.
Really?
Which I don't think is saying much. I don't. If there's a man of the match award, I don't think anyone deserves it. I don't know who they gave the sort of the classic at home man of the match award that's biased to
the sponsored one.
Yeah,
whoever they want to meet, basically.
Yeah, exactly. But no one really deserved. I thought it was a pretty sad game from Basuma. I know statistically he broke up some play, but there wasn't really he didn't create that differential like he normally does, where he gets on the ball a few times and drives it forward, and you're like, all right, yeah, here we go. Here's that Cadillac midfielder that we have. But you could make an argument to say that Lamptey's first half performance was excellent. Cucurella again showed some qualities, but overall it was just I thought it was Veltman's worst game for a while too. He was typically a decent performer, not very good. When you look at and Craig, I don't want to take your answer away from you. When you look at the start of the game and your front four players are Trossard, March, Mwepu, and Lamptey, and then we sit after the game and scratch our heads and go, "How did we not score?" Well, that's why. That's why, because then you don't really have a proper goal scorer there. Realistically, you've got an attacking midfielder, two wing backs, and a central midfielder, a box-to-box player. Oh,
yeah. I mean, it's March. Yeah, March was nowhere to be seen. You can say the same for McAllister as soon as he came on. He did have 45 minutes. That's half a game to make your impact, and he did very little. Apart from one decent cross from Veltman, it was fairly anonymous from him too. It was just one of those games. I just don't think anyone was really at the pace or doing anything. I mean, just points for trying in terms of Trossard, just doing something that he's not particularly, been asked to do before and trying to create chances in that role. I thought he put himself about a bit. I'm a massive fan of Trossard anyway, so I mean, there's slight bias there. But I think in terms of the leaps and bounds he's come on from last year, I like the fact that he's putting himself about. He's putting his body on the line, and he's trying to make something happen in evidently a format or a formation that we all agree doesn't work for teams like Newcastle or for strategies put against us in terms of the two banks of four. So yeah, you can put names forward in terms of anonymity or just lackluster is probably another word, but a strange one.
Not the best day at the office. Trossard, the nice thing that we have seen though is that with Mopé in the team, Trossard basically has to play in what I would now consider somewhat out of position, because we then force him out on the left or right wing. It's very clear to anyone watching that Trossard is actually really good in this false nine position. His hold-up play has improved dramatically. He is very capable of feinting really nicely and then cutting round the player, something that Neil doesn't give you. Neil will play with his back towards goal. He'll pass on and then make a run forward. And we're still not really excelled at capitalizing on that too well. So again, that comes back to the discussion about how do we get a striker into this team? Well, you put a striker in the team, you're then going to play Trossard in a position that he's slightly less comfortable in as well.
For me, Trossard was my man of the match as well. But again, as Adam said, that it really isn't saying much.
Slim pickings.
Yeah, it was. But I think he was our best player on the pitch. For me, I thought he, as you said, I think he excels in this role. And I think he's doing everything right. I think he's doing everything he's asked to do. He's causing all sorts of problems. And his relationship he has struck up with Cucurella this early and this quick is outrageous. I know that helps given that he's probably playing out on the left, training out on the left more often than anybody else, but their relationship is filthy. And we're only for 6 games in. I've been incredibly impressed with the synergy they've got already. And I want to bring up what Mikey actually said in the chat, and I think it's really a really good point. He said, I often think about what's going through their minds at the time. Solly has been replaced and forced out of position by Kukurea, and now he has to play elsewhere. So I won't be surprised if his mind isn't in the best place. I said this on the pod before you two joined. I feel that Solly is one of the biggest sufferers of crowd involvement in the team. If the crowd are in any way on his back or not happy with the team, I feel, and I've felt this since like the Withdean days when he was like a literal boy coming on as a sub. He is one of the biggest players that gets affected by the crowd. And I think we saw his best ever season because he was behind closed doors. And that was what I said last year. And I think yesterday was a great example of that. And Craig, you alluded to it. The people on Twitter and social media that went to the game were all very, very vocal yesterday about how quiet and uninspiring the crowd were yesterday.
It's been like that all season.
Yep. You would think it would be amazing because we've just had a whole year and a half of not being allowed to go, but it's not been. It's been really crap. And when you've got that happening, and the majority of the things is all you can hear is Newcastle fans booing Bissouma, if there is a player that's going to be hurt by that emotionally and mentally, for me, it was Solly March. And maybe looking at what Mikey has said, I'm feeling a little bit bad for slating Solly as bad as I am, because now I'm looking at it and thinking that's possibly a good reason as to why, if that's the way it is. But at the same time, he's also 27 years old. If your mental strength isn't there at that point,
as a Premier League footballer, and I guess there is that mental side of the game. I think Mikey's alluded to it before in one of his other comments in terms of just the mental strength in terms of some of these players and what they're doing. Confidence is an issue. It seems, we're winless in 6 games. We're out of the cup. Not that means anything to us, but for them, that is a loss and you're out of the cup. It's hard to, I guess, bounce back when there's nothing to bounce back from. So something needs to happen. We need to get that confidence back somewhere.
I know it's there's a level of, I don't know if it's irony, but people won't want to hear 3 idiots in America talk about how the atmosphere wasn't great at the Amex. But we even hinted at this earlier in the season too. Stick the away fans next to the North Stand. Let's get some chaos brewing, because where they're placed at the moment, for obvious reasons, you get them sort of interacting with either sort of family groups or the corporate lot, or people that staff that are there and whatnot. And you kind of just want a little bit more, craziness going on in the stands. Not a particularly inspiring setup to have. How much of a difference that makes, and we'll relate it back to a player like March or whatnot? Maybe. I think it's more based on the fact that the first thing that was said, which is he's sort of now pushed out of a position he was starting to get used to. Let's not forget, start of his career, he was always coming on for the most part as an impact sub on the wing further up, then forced back into a left wing. We played him at right wing back at certain points. Now he's trying to learn, well, how do I then play above a player that really wants to push forward and get up into a high up position? Now I need to work on some of the interplay there. And what do I do when he overlaps? Do I then cut inside, which is what you saw with the heat maps? He then goes into the middle of the field, doesn't know what to do with himself. So I think part of it is less about the mental attitude to the actual situation and more about positional awareness.
Yeah, and it doesn't help that he's been asked to play just about every position in his career, bar and centre half as well, right?
There's always time.
Yeah.
Still time.
Well, with the yellow cards we're starting to crop up, we might have to. We are looking at 3 players being 1 game away now from a ban. And
when does that reset? Is it half season?
Yeah, I think so. I wouldn't put my money on it, but yeah. I think so. But I know we've got Duffy, Veltman, and possibly Bissouma as well.
I mean, Sanchez is serving 1, but he was on 4 anyway. So
I will. I'm going to go back, by the way,
Lallana.
change my man of the match to Sanchez. because if he didn't do what he did, we walk away with no points from that game. So
Yep.
I'm editing it, despite the fact he was absolutely terrible for most of the game.
And also just for the sheer sight of seeing Dunk back in goal. I mean, there's very rarely can you say that about an outfield player, but seeing him back in goal, everyone loves seeing that.
Seeing an outfield player in goal is a lovely thing to witness, but not necessarily when it's your team playing. It's fun when it's a random team and they've had to put an outfield player in goal.
I do want to segue onto, because Newcastle, instead of going for a shot in the 92nd minute and trying to put that in the middle of the box with an outfield player in goal, Shelvey skims it over to the far side of the pitch, in which they do absolutely nothing with.
Yeah.
So I do want to talk about Newcastle maybe for a couple of minutes, just in terms of, obviously Eddie Howe is in the process of taking over, and just where they are with 5 draws, no wins out of 11 games. Just in terms of setting up, coming to the Amex, 2 banks of 4, playing very defensive, making it very hard for us to play our game. There was a clear strategy there, and it worked to a degree. But in terms of Adam's infamous motto of, just let Brighton beat themselves, that's exactly what they did.
When you look at that team, it's not inspiring, is it? I know that Eddie Howe's coming in there, and if possibly anyway, because there's still ifs, ands, and buts with that. But that's not a team that I can see Eddie Howe comfortably keeping up if there's no investment in January, which I'm sure there will be.
Yeah, don't worry about that.
I'm intrigued to see who they go for, honestly, because Eddie Howe has not had the most, prolific recruitment. He's signed some real stinkers in his time, so I'd be interested to see who he brings in for what is a very tough relegation battle down there. I mean, we've just seen a couple of managers get the boot, and I'm sure there'll be a couple more to come. I mean, Watford are only on their second manager, so you've got at least 2 more there.
Ole's still at the wheel, still there.
He's like, if there was a nuclear war, that boy is going to be chilling with the cockroaches and Twinkies. Like he is the Premier League cockroach. I don't know how he survived.
A horribly run club that we discussed last week, but I mean, Woodward quit, but hasn't quit. So I don't know when that fully goes into effect. Yeah, so there might be. This is alluded on another podcast whether there's an element of this changing of the guard from that standpoint, whether or not he has to kind of just stand pat for now and wait. And who would they replace him with? Who's top tier that's available? Conte just got picked up by Spurs, which I think is a fantastic hire. But it's not shocking that there's been this mass turnover. It happens always when clubs think there's the international week off, so they can come in and learn and speak with the players and implement something during that additional week. Bit of a shame for Daniel Farke to win a game finally and then be removed. And then Smith at Villa, which I think has upset quite a lot of people as well, but they've been pretty diabolical lately.
Yeah, they haven't been good, have they? I know they're saying they're shocked, but I'm surprised they're shocked.
Loss. 5 in a row.
And the money that they've spent too, just in terms of, using the Grealish money and really not making an impact. You saw, obviously Barkley leaving as well. But yeah, it's very strange use of the money. I think I said to you guys, very hasty signings as opposed to well thought out. Leads to 5 losses and the manager that got them there in the first place sacked.
Yeah, it's mental though, isn't it? When you think just 5 losses is enough to get him binned off. They're not forgiving at Villa. Are you concerned? Brendan Rodgers, I know you said, I'm not sure if we'd gone live yet or not. You'd said that Brendan Rodgers was possibly in line to take the job at Manchester United. Definitely could happen. My hang up there is that he would be quite a smart managerial signing, and they're not smart. And secondly, he did manage Liverpool, and that's always a dodgy one. Not that it matters for Everton signing Rafa, but sometimes that can be a hindrance. to recruiting teams getting people in. If that happens, any concern about Graham Potter with Villa and Leicester both looking for a new manager, or do you think that they're both going to be looking up?
Too many question marks. I think if you're looking at prospective managers, if you bring in Potter, maybe you think about the personnel that you have better at Leicester and he'll do a really good job with them. But I still think as a big club, you have to look at Potter and say, is he ready for that step up quite yet? I think if he finishes, if we finish in the top half of the table, top 10 or 12, then at the end of the season, Potter is in a position to potentially be in conversation with those jobs. You could arguably say on current form, current situation, that it might be half a year too soon for him to walk into one of those.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think just in terms of what it's a results orientated business, isn't it? In terms of what people are looking for at the top, in terms of, are you winning things? Are you consistently winning? Obviously we're playing a very nice brand of football and it's very exciting for us, obviously, in terms of what we're doing and the infrastructure he's putting in place. Potter's not going to have the same reign at one of the top tier clubs. So he's not going to have that freedom to implement his ideas and his philosophy in all stages of that club. So I'm not concerned, especially, we're winless in 6. The football's good, but again, we're coming back to a problem that hasn't been solved yet and hasn't been solved for a year and a half. So that would definitely put clubs off.
Yeah, I think the only one that does worry me is Villa. I think they are going to go for a manager that is too good for him, and I don't think they're going to get him. I think they're going to shoot high to start with. I'm not sure who, but I think they're going to try and shoot pretty high and find out that they're not interested in taking the job. And I think that could then lead to a problem for us. And the only reason I say it is because with their transfer window, that they won the transfer window trophy almost, right? Like there was a load of people just waxing lyrical over this transfer market they had and how amazing it was and how excellent they did with signing all these players. And they did have a pretty decent window. But the main thing about them is most of the signings are all quite young. And that's Potter's MO. Bailey's 24, Buendia's 24, Ollie Watkins is 25. There would be an argument, I believe, Tuan Zabi, whatever his name is. There would be an argument, I think, if you're on the board at Villa and you go, look at what he's doing there. We have players that can play the way those Brighton players can. And we have Danny Ings up front and Ollie Watkins up front. Could he be capable of getting us to the next level? That's my only concern.
I don't see it, Josh. I think there is it's not a big enough step up for Potter. And
I agree with that.
So they can want all they'd like. He's got it good at Brighton. And he should move, hypothetically, when his stock is as high as it could be and he has as much leverage as he could want. And that's why I say I'm more concerned about him moving as and when he has a big season that puts us out of the relegation battle and we've moved into that slightly different tier, and he can look back and say, look what I did, and here's where the club are now. Right now, there's that reason. The other piece is I'm not worried about any club that has already fired their manager, because that means they have a plan in place for who they want to bring in. They've already been having conversations for weeks. So with Villa and with Watford, they should know who's on their list.
Unless you're Newcastle.
Well, not Watford. Villa and who just fired them out? Norwich. Yeah, unless you're Newcastle, sure. But even they had a list that then just didn't work out, right?
They're probably running an elaborate Squid Game in Saudi to pick the next one.
Oh, God. Yeah, so I'm not worried about that personally. I think for me, the worry is Potter going to a European footballing side in a year and a half, 2 years.
That one feels a little bit inevitable, and that's fine by me. I think I'm not going to have any complaints when it happens. I'll be sad, but I'm not going to be like, why are you letting that happen? Like, that's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
I have a Leicester fan that's a good friend of mine, and he's the same way. I mean, he's saying the same thing about Manchester United. When you're a Leicester fan, you accept that there's still going to be 4 or 5 teams at minimum that are going to be able to take anyone they want off you, and we aren't as big as they are, so we're in the same boat.
Rodgers would be a nice hire for Man U because they'd still be able to continue with their consistently crap European performances, and it would be, completely standard for Rodgers and how he does with Europe.
Yeah, it would. Interestingly, on the Premier League stuff before we wrap, Brentford.
Oh, horrible!
What a sudden drop.
4 defeats in a row now.
Yep, to relegation fodder.
Yeah, all of them. Like I was saying, we are in that bottom 6 of the form table. They're right in there with us. Them and Villa as well. They had a great start, and I mean, at least we're getting points.
I was about to say that win against them seems all the more important. I mean, I guess in terms of, because it looks like everyone else is going to beat them now too. So it feels good that we at least got points there.
Yeah, they've got a big one next with Newcastle. That's going to be a very interesting bellwether for what their rest of their season looks like. Because if they beat them with the new manager bounce, or at least take a point, I think you can look at them and think they're probably going to squeak it, and Newcastle are still in big trouble, which is great.
But I mean, back to Villa. Do you reckon they'll have someone in before our next game? Obviously, we're playing them next. Lovely new manager bounce. I don't know who's in contention for that job or whether they actually have anyone lined up. I imagine they do, considering how hasty that was. But are we in for a nice little new manager defeat?
I think they've got to, right? I think, like Adam said, like they're firing them right before the international break because they surely have someone on the books that they're looking at getting in. Yeah. Steven Gerrard is odds-on favourite at a couple of betting places. 11-4 at Sky Bet, Paddy Power Evan at 10-11. Steven Gerrard. John Terry is in there. Ralph Hasenhüttl is in there. They seem to be the ones that are on that list.
I mean, Hasenhüttl was a no, isn't it? Given Southampton's, I mean, I have a lot of friends. I used to live in Southampton for a bit, and I think in terms of the way that they're playing versus their results, they're playing very well at the moment. So I can't see that happening.
Would be a surprise, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But the fact that their list is just like seems all over the place on the betting odds tells you that I don't know.
No one has a clue. Yeah.
Hopefully it's an attacking manager, so they'll come out and try and attack against us rather than bring in someone who will sit back and do what Newcastle did to us. Because it would be bad for us to have a caretaker manager in charge because they're typically more conservative. And no, I want to play against a team that are going to come out and try and take the game to us. So hopefully they bring in someone.
Not only that, but try and prove to their manager that they're worth starting.
Yeah, so exactly. Yeah, bring it on. Bring in someone with an attacking mindset.
Good point.
We have Villa and Leeds next 2 games before the end of November. If we fail to win in either of those 2 games, we are pound for pound performing worse than last season with 12 games on the board, with the games played against those exact same teams. It doesn't feel like that, given our place in the table. Do you think that... Again, this is a long way away still. There's a lot of games to be played before January 1st. There's 9 games still to be played. Do you think we are going to go into that transfer market in January? Tony Bloom has said that he's been on record like 4 times, I think, at Fan Forum saying he hates winter transfer windows with a passion. But when you look at our start to the season and knowing what could be, and you look at our goals for and our goals against, and one of them is top half and one of them is bottom 6. Do you look at them and do you think he goes out and makes an effort at minimum to bring in a loan, maybe because Danny Welbeck's injury looks bad, or does, as Mikey said, maybe even recall an Andy Zakiri? Do you think? And I know that he has an option, him and There's another one. There's him and someone else do have only like half-season loans with an option to
We
read.
can't get Matoma, right? He doesn't have the work permit. We can't get... Who's the chap that we signed right at the end that went out on loan? He can't come back. The forward.
Seema.
Thank you. Seema. His name
that's
has
the one.
escaped me. He can't
he's
come
a
back.
full season.
Casado? Is Casado over at Beershot?
It's him. Yeah, never mind. He's not striker.
Yeah,
it's
he's not gonna
him and Zakiri are both able to be recalled in January.
Matoma's who I'd love to see in the team. I think that's what we're missing. There's an argument to be said, even if he's not comfortable with making signings in January, is that you came into the end of the transfer window hoping. We know there's absolutely no doubt they were trying to sign an attacking player. We know that.
Yep.
Didn't work out. Okay, so we already know that. Then you lose Welbeck, as you say. Mope, you gave him a chance. Is he going to come good? Well, he started out all right and then hasn't really. So I think in some ways you're more desperate for that player than you were even when you were desperate. So I wouldn't be shocked to see if he does something potentially out of character. I don't know how much it will solve. And it doesn't also take away from the fact that what we've talked about time and time again is that lots of clubs are looking for those players and lots of clubs are going to be willing to now spend more and offer more. So we'll see what happens. Darwin Núñez watch is back on with the Portuguese fans begging us to buy him from them.
I mean, like, I don't think any of us are coming across in the summer when we were talking about it at transfer window time. I don't think any of us are thinking it now. Like, we're not one of those fans, like, none of us are, that are thinking, let's spend £100 million on new players like Villa are every year. Like, I just want to see the investment match the ambition. And it's absolutely abundantly obvious that our ambition is to be a top 10 club. We are building it from the bottom up. We've done a lot of work to do so. I don't mind if the short-term club target is to stick around 15th for 3 or 4 years and see what this group of young players we've signed does. But don't show us otherwise then. Like, I would just say we brought a bunch of young talent and this is an exciting period of growth. Bullshit. You know what I mean? Like, that sort of stuff. I don't need them to come out and go, yeah, we're just happy to stay up for 4 more years. Like, you can spin it in a way that everyone knows exactly what you're saying. And it's a fine. I'm absolutely fine with it. But it doesn't seem to be the case with what the club is saying or implying in the past. It certainly seems like we're aiming higher. And I think if we're going to really do that, sooner or later we are going to have to get the checkbook out and pay more than we want to for a player that could make that happen. And if it doesn't happen, there's about, I think every single one of the other 19 clubs in the Premier League has spent a lot of money on a striker and it not happened. But they've also spent a lot of money on strikers and it's changed their entire next 10 years. So, you know, why not at this point? We've seen what we can get.
Interesting. It'll be, I mean, yeah, we'll see. I mean, in terms of notoriously difficult to try and we've seen it with the adaptability of players as well, in terms of Trossard took a while to come on, McAllister, you know, those sort of things. And I think maybe that's why Bloom is a bit hesitant around the January transfer window, where you just throw them into a team that they don't know and expect immediate change, which is very rare. So you have to be careful with those type of players. I mean, you're looking at someone that is experienced when you bring in a January transfer. You don't have a pre-season to get them ready. Not everyone can be a Cucurella and hit the ground running as fast as he has. So I think we have to be realistic, but in terms of, do I think we should? Yes. Do I think they'd hit the ground running? Probably not.
Give me Jesse Lingard. I'll take Lingard. He's not being used. Ollie's an idiot. I think he would offer us something nice. I just think we need options. And again, I'm gonna bore people to tears with saying this. I think we need options of players. It doesn't need to be a striker. I just want someone that can put their foot through a ball and shoot.
Should I tell you what I'd take? And this is another one of those ones where, like, it's not a 20 goal a season player. I just want a different option, like you said. I'd take Divock Origi in a heartbeat for 6 months, just to see what that extra presence would do. He's not great, But like, he's also one of those players that when he has gone on loan from Liverpool or he starts getting a decent run of games in Europe or whatever, he just starts banging them in, like, and then doesn't get games in the Premier League because he's behind Firmino or now Jota and stuff like that. I get it,
Yeah.
but like, he's never playing. And when he did go on loan, like 2 or 3 years ago, he scored a bunch of goals, and he hasn't really seemed to be in a conversation with any team to go out on loan again. Maybe he's just one of those players that's happy to sit there and collect money, loads of money, and not play. If that's the case, don't bother. But like, that's the level I'm asking for, just to see if that's something that actually works. And if it doesn't, and it looks useless by having a bigger presence in there at times, then you know that that's not the answer either, and we need to do whatever we need to do in the summer. If we turn around and like Origi of all players scores 8 goals in the second half of the season and looks dangerous, and Mopé scores 4 or 5 off of his knockdowns or second balls, then you're like, all right, well, we're on to something here. If we can get 14 goal involvements from Divock Origi of all people in 6 months of football, we probably need to go out there and spend a £30 million on another player.
Yeah. We don't need 20 goals. We need 5-6 goals at the right time. That's the difference.
It's just a different type of player. I think that's pretty much the crux of it, isn't it? Just someone that brings something different to the table, just so that there is, I wouldn't say a plan B, but there is another option for us to play against teams like this. You know, we saw us play Liverpool and how well we played, you know, in terms of against the team that will attack us. And that's not the problem. The problem is breaking down teams and having another option in order to do that.
We should not be starting a game at home against the side bottom of the league that don't have a manager with Solly March as one of our 3 most attacking players in the team, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I like Solly. It's just no. And
a false 9 is rather ineffective against a team with little to no space between their lines.
Yeah.
I just thought it was the wrong play from the beginning. Do we have anything else that we'd like to cover before we look ahead to next week real quick?
I don't. I would like to go on record and say this is my worst FPL week to date. And I want to just accept that and move on. That's all I want to say about that.
FPL's tough, but you basically have to captain Salah or take a big risk nowadays and see what works out. Trent just swung in a really nice free kick, and I don't have him either. It's just bad times.
I do have him. I am getting by on the back of my back 4 this week, which was Reguilon, Trent, and Livramento getting a bunch of points for me. I brought in Smith Rowe for Grealish this week. He got me 8 points, and I've captained Salah, who's already got an assist, so that will do nicely. I was naive enough to play Sanchez in goal and put Edison on the bench of all people. At home to Newcastle, we're beaten 3-0 in a row both times, and I was like, I don't see how Newcastle are going to score much here.
No, but you can't. You put all your chips, you put all the eggs in the one basket, didn't you? That's the problem right there. You got to spread the joy and the failure out.
Yeah, and it was just pure failure. All right. Well, next week, it's not going to be a live episode. So Mikey, Owen, Enoch on the door, definitely appreciate you tuning in. It's always fun to have people come in and give their opinions. You've basically made the podcast like 25 minutes longer because of that. So
sorry to everyone about that.
Yeah.
Next week we have Uwe Hunemeyer on. I say on as if like he's not been on yet. We've already talked to him. It was a fantastic chat. We've already posted it all over socials, and we would highly recommend tuning in for the show. It's a really good one. He talks about just about everything from his entire career, and it's just a bit of a legend.
What a man. What a man.
Not to big this up too much, but I can't tell you how fantastic a chat it was and how nice of a man he is, just in terms of character. And as you say, we talked about Jurgen Klopp because he came through the Dortmund youth system. We talked about celebrations after promotion. some of the relationships and who he still stays in touch with and friends that he had at the club. Just an awesome time.
Yeah, it's great and really eye-opening to see how it wasn't just appearances. That squad really were together. Like they were absolutely, they love it, and they still keep in touch today, which is great. Just makes it even feel nicer to know that they really were like that off the pitch too. And yeah, there is some superb conversation about those promotion parade conversations and that the Wigan post-Wigan mayhem. So I think you'll all enjoy it a lot. All right, well, we'll let you go, and we will see you all in 2 weeks to review the Villa game, new manager bounce. I suspect there'll be a lot to talk about in that episode, to be honest. We will have a new Norwich manager, we'll have a new Villa manager, we'll have a new Newcastle manager, whether it's Howe or not, because I think that train hasn't quite stopped yet. There's no brakes on that shit show. Mm-hmm. And you're going to have, who knows, maybe one or two others. You never know what Watford are going to do.
I'm going to come out and say as a final bit here, our next game is a must win, because I think if you look at that form and where we end up, if we do not win that game, I think you start to see some pretty distinct panic. Yeah, I really do.
It's starting to get to that place now. Winless in 6, you start getting 7, 8 winless games in a row. The pressure starts mounting. It's increasingly harder to bounce back from that. So it's key. These, I think, not just the next game, but also Leeds vitally as well.
Yep. Yeah. All right, lads. Thanks a lot. Have a great week off, everybody. My wife is delighted with the international break because that's the time when I have to do all the crap things over the next So we will see you all in 2 weeks. Have a wonderful weekend, and be safe.
Thanks for listening. Right. Yeah, listen to the Uwe pod. It's awesome.
Yeah,
that'll be out. I'm going to release that next Saturday, I think, just like as if it was match day. You can sit and enjoy 90 minutes with Who Am I?
Chisel.
Perfect. Thanks, guys.
Bye.